Hey everyone, and welcome to Backseat Sports. I'm Josh, and that is Caleb. And boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to talk about today. This is a juicy one, to say the least. We're talking about Adrian Martinez, the starting quarterback for the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and answering the age-old question: is Adrian Martinez a good quarterback? And we're in Nebraska world, and so I'll be interested to see what you guys have to say in the comments down below. And it's going to be interesting, guys. Buckle in, and it's going to be a good time. Caleb, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Obviously, this video took a lot of time and research, diving to the advanced stats. We're not just going to stand here and talk to you guys just on our thoughts and opinions. We're going to come here with some evidence to back up our claims. Yes, this is a true research paper here. This was quite the time, and we're excited to bring it to you.
Let's just summarize the arguments real quick, the broad arguments, and then we can kind of get into the nitty gritty of what we're going at here. So obviously, like on the good side, the arguments that people make for Adrian being a good quarterback, or at least a solid quarterback, would be, of course, his playmaking ability with his legs. I mean, he can make big time plays on the ground and bail himself out or bail the offense out of tough situations or situations that he was put in that were no good. And that's happened a lot over the past 2 years with the offensive line situations.
We've needed him.
That Nebraska's had, definitely. And obviously, people really, I think a very common argument is addressing his accuracy and efficiency in like the short yardage passes and completion percentages, one of the obvious things a lot of people point at. And then, of course, he's a veteran in the system, that the improvement moving forward. He's a veteran in the system. He has the experience, and he's the guy for the job because of all of these things. Obviously, there's more of those things. We'll talk about them a little bit more in a little bit. Then the arguments for the bad side would generally be like his inefficiency downfield, his tendency to, maybe that's a generous term, for turnovers and interceptions. Fumbling the ball has been a problem in his career. And just overall, kind of like his clutch and what that looks like in a second half. But that's been a question mark for the whole Nebraska team under Frost is closing out games in the second half as a whole. So those are kind of the biggest overall arguments. Again, we'll get more nitty gritty here throughout the video, trust me. But it's gonna be really, really interesting. So Caleb, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the tendencies? Take us away.
Yeah. So
what does Adrian do?
Again, the big thing that we always see highlighted on Twitter is he's so accurate in those short-term situations. And so let's dive into, I guess, Adrian in the short term, in the short passing game. So Adrian's completion percentage, right? So 27.5% of Adrian's throws were behind the line of scrimmage. And you're like, Caleb, you always have to be behind the line of scrimmage to pass. No. His targets were behind the line of scrimmage.
He was lawfully throwing the ball.
I know how football works, guys. I know how football works. Calm down. No. His targets were behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
Which was sixth most in college football, which is pretty crazy.
Right. Which makes sense. When you watch the offense, you're like, okay, yeah, we're throwing the ball, we're throwing those screen passes, we're getting in the flats, we're getting the ball out to Wandale or to other running backs or, whoever it is on the edges. That's not surprising. But where Caleb was headed with this is the second part of this is where you'd think, okay, well, screens, but like
93.5%.
There you go. Spoiler alert. He has a 93.5% completion percentage, which on the surface sounds fantastic. You're like, well, that's great. 93.5%. But on screen passes, that's the key here, is that he has a 93.5% completion percentage on screen passes, which is 96th in the country out of 101 qualified quarterbacks with 75 dropbacks. So not an ideal situation. Again, all of these stats are coming from Pro Football Focus and their advanced stats for college football. And definitely not a great sign there off the rip, where you'd think that would be a good stat, but it's not necessarily the greatest of stats. And then you head forward inside the tendencies which is a ton. So the majority of his passes were in that 0 to 10 yard range. And he did complete 90.9% of those passes, which is the fifth best in the country. So there's the good and the bad there. Is you get a lot of those short passes, but he is completing the short passes. So, there's the give and take, which is a good thing for sure.
So is it because, with that stat, I think there's a few things. One, is it because coaches don't trust him to throw it deep? Two, is it because
he's good?
He's good at it, or is it because we don't have time? That 0 to 10 yards is pretty interesting, but that's a ton, too much. Again, too many of his passes that way. It's pretty predictable. So.
Yes. So, and then 15.7 of Adrian's passes were within 11 to 20 yards, which was 147th most in the country. So near the bottom of the list in most attempts or a percentage of passes in that range, which he did have a decent completion percentage in that range, which was 37th in the country. So you'll take that at least as a whole, but you know, not including the screen passes. So if you take out all screen passes that he throws, which he throws a lot of screen passes, as we just found out, he's still 130th out of 151 in average depth, which again, you can still win games by not throwing the ball downfield, but as long as you're efficient with the throws downfield, and obviously we'll be talking about that more in a little bit. So those are some of the tendencies for Adrian. Off the rip, I guess the question is, Caleb, like, what do you think leads to those tendencies? And where are you at with kind of like that aspect of just what Adrian does?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I think about, I mean, again, a lot of it is our offensive scheme, right? We are trying to get the ball out to the edges and the corners. So I think that is definitely part of it. But I think when I think that he's not always great at completing those, a ton of examples come to mind where the ball that he's throwing is either completely inaccurate or just misplaced, where the running back has to turn back around going away from the play, or it comes off too soft or too slow or way too high over a guy's head or too low. And so I just feel like even when he does complete the passes, they're not in the optimal place to get that play moving quickly toward, the first down marker. I feel like a lot of times our guys are having to adjust to the ball, and it's a short pass that, I think most college quarterbacks can make. And it has been concerning for the last 3 years and frustrating, as
Right. So, I mean, that kind of is referencing like the accuracy on the screens, which, you'd think would be good, but isn't. I mean, I think that's fair. The other aspect, of course, with the tendencies is one of the questions is, okay, well, maybe he's throwing it short because he doesn't have a lot of time to throw, which, to be fair, in average time to throw in college football, he is ranked 100th out of 161 of a minimum of 75 dropbacks, but which is not great. So, I mean, yes, he was pressured. The offensive line didn't do a great job of protecting him with time to throw. I don't think anybody's
shocked to hear that.
Right. But what gets really interesting, though, is when you compare Adrian's placement in college football with some other than guys like Mac Jones, Michael Penix Jr. from Indiana, Trevor Lawrence. He was actually 157th out of 161. And he's Trevor Lawrence. So and like Kyle Trask was like basically right there with Adrian as well, near that mark. So there are some like interesting things, but I don't think that reason necessarily is a good mark for like an excuse, I guess, technically, for Adrian's lack of ability there. But yeah, that one was like at least really, really interesting to me when like looking through this for sure.
Yeah. And the crazy thing was, Adrian was only under pressure technically 26.1% of his throws, which wasn't anything crazy. That's 112th least in the country. And I think part of that is, again, maybe some of Adrian's, decisiveness is that the play calling. Again, that's a lot of things when we don't get to see everything, but he wasn't under pressure
that much.
Compared to other people, he had time. There was definitely time for him to throw the ball.
And that was a really surprising stat. Because like when you watch it, you feel like Adrian's always under pressure. Because there is an aspect of like Adrian, it's like, okay, if the throw's not immediately there, I'm tucking this thing and running. And that's a pretty common theme for Adrian, which again, can work because you trust his legs. And we have seen it work in his career. And so that's not always a knock on him. But there is a balance sometimes where he might give up a bigger play for like the 4-yard QB run up the middle because of the first read not being there and just giving up a little bit there on that. So those are kind of the question marks again. And the other good sign for Adrian was when he had less than 2.5 seconds to throw the ball, he actually had the second highest completion percentage in the whole country, only behind Mac Jones. So, that's a good sign. He had an 89.5% adjusted completion percentage when under pressure with less than 2.5 seconds to throw the ball. So that's a pretty dang good stat. But the counter to this stat is the kicker here is in a ranking of all college quarterbacks with less than 2.5 seconds to throw, the average depth of target of those throws, Adrian was ranked 159th out of 161 in college football. So he was throwing it on average 2.4 yards down the field when he had less than 2.5 seconds to throw. So those are the problems. It's interesting, and we are painting a picture here, and trust me, we're going to keep going through a lot of these stats, but we'll talk in a bigger picture at the end, kind of like in just overall developing all these stats and what they mean. Then the question mark, I guess, would be like, okay, is he not throwing downfield when under pressure because he isn't good at it, because he doesn't want to, because it's not what Frost wants, because that we're lean in that kind of argument.
I do think part of it is our offense always has a running back in the area for a bailout, because I don't think we trust our offensive line that much. So I think we are good at giving Adrian some sort of option to get the ball out. Yeah. I do think that that's a good thing that Frost has in the offensive system, and it clearly shows with that's definitely been working. And with the downfield throws, I definitely just don't. I think it's a lack of confidence, but there's usually something to hinder that, whether that's a turnover, a fumble, or he was just missing passes. And I feel like just as the game kind of goes on, his field definitely shrinks and shrinks. I definitely think that's been a key, and it starts
compounding.
It seems like it compounds and magnifies the situation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You can call that narrative-y, but I've seen it. I think I've seen enough.
Oh, we definitely seen it quite a bit for sure. I mean, we went back and watched all the games like leading into this video to make sure we weren't missing anything. We're like, this is kind of what happens with Adrian here. So, but we'll get more into some of those things too. So next thing is a clean v not clean pocket. So when Adrian has time for when he doesn't have time, and what that comparison looks like. So according to Pro Football Focus, again, PFF has a legion of scouts that scout all college football teams, and they average all the ratings of all their scouts. So it's a pretty interesting way to gauge where players are. Again, you can take it for what you will, because it's an X amount of scouts from PFF's opinion on a player. But Adrian was the 16th highest rated overall quarterback when there was not a clean pocket, which is interesting. That is considering running and passing. So here's the kickers. He was the 5th best running ranked quarterback when under pressure, but
which I think's true.
I agree. And when you watch the film, you're like, oh wow, he makes those nice plays, even when he wasn't as he didn't feel as elusive last year as he did in previous years.
He's had a lot of practice with bad snaps or miscues. We've been pretty good at that, so glad to see that the practice is paying off there.
Yeah, I agree. And but the kicker here is that when not under pressure, so he's 16th highest rated when under pressure, but when not under pressure, he was ranked 110th overall, because he doesn't run the ball when not under pressure. So then he has to pass the ball, and gotta know what happens. It's like it doesn't go very well. And so he was ranked 112th by PFF in passing with a clean pocket, which is pretty tough. He was 31st in adjusted completion percentage in a clean pocket, but he was 125th in big time throws, which are throws downfield of 15 plus yards, and 125th in the country in that category when not under pressure. So when that's pretty tough.
Time to throw. I think that goes to just indecision and just lack of time, like good timing with the receivers. Like he'll have the right idea, but it's too late, and the timing is not right for him. And like he'll know where to throw it. It's just not quickly enough.
Yeah, I agree. One other funny stat that I thought was interesting was when Adrian was sacked, he had the 10th least amount of time to throw out of any player in the country, which I think does make sense, because if Adrian is not able to get away from that pass rush, it's because he was absolutely just collapsed upon,
and I think that's just like an offensive line just absolutely misses the assignment. There's no chance, he's sacked. I think
so. That goes to show, like, there are moments where our O-line just absolutely blows it, and even an elusive quarterback like Adrian gets smoked, and he had the 10th least amount of time to throw when sacked. So 2.9 seconds to throw when sacked, and that's with a quarterback who's able to escape the pocket and get out. So that's tough. That's real tough. So I don't know, any thoughts there with the clean versus not clean pocket, or just kind of move on to the interesting thing here is the downfield throwing and kind of where we go from there.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that people have knocked Adrian for, so I'm excited to get into the stats.
Lead the way.
Oh, man. So throws 20 plus yards down the field. Adrian ranks 114th in adjusted accuracy.
114th.
With at least, 114th with 133rd in NFL passing rating in 20 plus yard passes. So
so
it's
second to
rough
last
out here. He's second to last in the country. He's ranked 128th in deep ball passes, essentially.
Yeah, so PFF ranks him in passes of 20-plus yards. It's the same thing, like I said earlier, all the scouts ranking him in passes of 20-plus yards downfield. He was ranked 128th out of 133.
But it gets
football.
Worse.
Oh,
it somehow gets worse. He's the 13th worst with turnover-worthy plays. So 14% of the time, over 14% of the time, when he throws the ball, not only is it inaccurate, it's a liability.
Yeah.
And I think of the North. He finally, I think a lot of times Adrian doesn't step into the ball fully. Like he steps into the ball. It's a great looking ball, but it's into triple coverage on a 20-yard plus play.
Yeah, that was tough.
It's just, finally when we think we get most of the stuff put together, he throws it into triple coverage and it's a pick. That Northwestern game, he got benched. Like, he played terrible. We should have won that game. Our defense was playing great. Like, oh my goodness, he just literally could not pass the ball, and it cost us the game. Just plain and simple there.
Yeah, and in it have or should have made the play on converting an interception or a turnover of some sort there. So
we all know defense plays defense for a reason, though. The brick hands.
Exactly. Yeah. So, that's pretty tough. 13th worst. So, out of all quarterbacks for 14.3% of his passes. And the other thing was just the tendencies wise, he did only throw downfield on 13.1% of his throws, which was 104th most in college football. So definitely he didn't throw downfield much at all. And I mean, we knew that. Watching our offense last year, we had no downfield passing whatsoever. It felt like it did not happen.
No.
And not to mention when it did, it basically came down to like a miraculous catch from a tight end or a miraculous catch from Wandale. So when you get rid of Wandale, you're taking out a large portion of the big time catches downfield, which is definitely pretty scary. So I guess now the real conversation gets here, Caleb, and we got to talk about the nitty gritty here about some of the strengths and weaknesses. And the people out there are following with us at least a little bit here with all the stats that we're kind of throwing out there.
We have glazed eyes out in the virtual audience.
I literally
so many numbers.
But where are you at with Adrian Martinez and the strengths and weaknesses of him as a player and what that translates to on-field play heading into 2021 and this fall with the insanely tough schedule that Nebraska has? Like, where are you at with Adrian at this point? Obviously.
Yeah, that's the tough part about being the QB1, obviously. There's a lot of scrutiny that comes with it, but he's just not making the right, he's just not keeping those fundamentals to make that pass. So I think if that can happen, again, his feet are really good. He's really good at escaping pressure. I think if he could do that, if he can get a little bit better in the pocket where he doesn't need to have the happy feet and run away, just, step up, step to the side, make the throw, I feel like we'd be in a lot better place this year. Time will only tell with those things. He can be accurate. I think it's mostly the fundamentals for him. Like, we've seen him have
just
good
that processing.
Before. Yeah,
I agree. There's some of that, like in the moment, staying calm, staying collected, and making up his hand like what?
Why'd you throw a duck there?
You have those like what throws?
Yeah.
There was definitely one against, who was that against? Rutgers, when he threw it to the end zone and just like straight, or it was like one of the picks on the rollout. I'll probably find it and insert it here. Also, we're showing the clips in this video, by the way. So you're welcome, Big Ten Network, for probably getting this thing demonetized, and they're going to take our money.
Thanks.
They're taking our $10. No. Why? Why do they need our $10?
I could have gone to
in a bad downfield passer. Is it personnel? We just don't have a guy. We don't have the Stanley Morgan of his freshman year. We don't have the guys downfield to make those big.
I definitely feel like it's just accuracy. There was so many times where the ball's just out of bounds. It's, way over the guy's head.
The fade to the end zones.
Yeah, so many fade to the end zones that literally they're just where it's one-on-one coverage. We have the tight end, but he literally just misses it
or
out of bounds.
Zings a ball straight over a dude's
overthrowing. Which again, I really wouldn't feel we'd be in this place 3 years in with Adrian, especially his freshman year. But it just really hasn't improved. So I mean, can year 4, can he really make that jump again? Like, I don't know. I think maybe it's definitely partly a confidence thing.
Right, because we saw him do it, make some great downfield throws his freshman year with Stanley Morgan and make those big time plays. JD Spielman made huge time plays freshman year downfield.
And we were like, big.
No,
JD Spielman's not a big guy.
he had some insane throws to JD downfield, and we just haven't seen that at all. And
big targets.
That's what gets me worried.
Tyler Lockett's insane, and he's a small guy.
Tyreek Hill, yeah, like those types of guys.
Hill, yeah. Brandon Cooks.
Obviously, we don't have those types of guys, but I mean, Wan'Dale was great, and Adrian did hit him a few times. There was that really nice over-the-shoulder type play that Wan'Dale made, and a pretty solid throw from Adrian Rutgers, there. So those really throws were really, really nice, and a great catch from Wan'Dale for sure. And like we've seen Adrian make some nice throws across the middle of the field at times, but it's just so inconsistent. And if you can't do it in the fourth quarter when it matters the most, then it's like, when are you going to do it? And the turnovers against Rutgers, consistent. Like, some of those fumbles, you're like,
again, just he'll misread the coverage. Like I think there's one against Northwestern where it should have been picked, it wasn't. Where he just misses the QB spot, and
right.
He'll just throw so many passes where he thinks it's single coverage, but it's really double coverage or it's really triple coverage. And I don't know. I just you think it'd be. I mean, obviously the defense is going to throw stuff at you, but just too often when it is the deep ball, he's just really he's also making the wrong decision a lot of the times. And that's why that percentage of, danger zone or where it should have been gaps in coverages.
Yeah. And that could partly be on our receiving core. I mean, was it the most talented group of guys? No, definitely not. Obviously not. I mean, it's Wan'Dale and a bunch of, solid, Oliver Martin, and like those guys are out there making plays. I mean, obviously Austin Allen made some unbelievable plays. I mean, that catch in the Iowa game,
it was the Iowa game. Yeah, saved our lives.
Insane. It's like some of those types of plays. You're like, holy crap, we are unreal. And then you get to the point I have where I'm like, can we get to that point? And legit level. I mean. What are the range of outcomes for Adrian in your head for this season? Like, what does that look like heading into 2021? Like, can Adrian be good enough in his current state with his legs, his playmaking ability, his accurate short range passing in the 0 to 10 yard range? Can this to be a competitive team in the Big Ten? Like, what would it take there?
I mean, we always have to keep the defense honest, and I think the lack of passing definitely hurt us. Again, watching so many teams would just stack the box against us because they had to respect the run so much, but didn't have to respect the pass. If we had that even just a sliver, again, Adrian's gonna have tons of chances. There was tons of single coverage, and good and threatening team because teams are going to have to respect the run a lot more because we're gonna have two running backs essentially in that backfield. Can he be consistent enough? I'd say with essentially this much data point, I'm not so sure, but can he do the little things right, some of the fundamentals to boost those percentages a good percent, 8%? I think definitely he can for deep balls. Again, there's plenty of single coverage opportunities that are going to be awaiting him this season.
Your mind relies on a breakout from Omar Manning or something along those lines where we can have a legit breakout and get that Stanley Morgan type player back or who he trusts and can keep that thing up downfield and make some big time plays. I
think Wan'Dale definitely leaving hurts because
and that's the other debate.
Wan'Dale was so much of those 10-yard passes, and those were great passes for Nebraska because they turned into 15, 20 yards because he was so deadly. We're definitely losing something there.
Yeah. But can Omar and Samori Toure fill those gaps though?
Maybe. I mean, only time will tell with that. I mean, I think Omar looked really good in the spring game. I think Toure can be good. Yeah, I mean, those are going to help, right? I mean, when you have bigger targets that have a way bigger field of range, accuracy doesn't matter as much as long as they're decently, 50-50 balls. So it definitely can help. And you think back to Stanley Morgan his freshman year, making tons of, he had to tips of his fingers catch that football because it was way too high, or make the diving grab. If those guys can do that, obviously that's nothing but a giant help for us. I think he can be without Wan'Dale Robinson.
I mean, realistically, you'd expect the O-line to be at least a little bit better this year, maybe some minor improvement from last year. I know you don't think it's going to be more,
even as
just the experience.
Great. Yeah, again, just the experience. I mean, I don't want to be an absolute amazing center.
I think that this whole year plus spring camp finally, we could see some of that improvement that we've been waiting to see on the O-line. It's not like straight garbage.
I don't see that for us. I still see like 75th. But
okay, I mean, well,
happens. But
yeah, I think we can get to that 60 mark or like 50th rank type mark in college football. But and if that's the case.
Our run game's got a lot of questions. Our offense just has a ton of question marks.
It's a ton of question marks. And so like that's why it's hard to project what Adrian's going to do this year with the so many different variables in the O-line, with the transfers with Toure and Omar finally playing, and then all the running, the massive amount of run question marks. So at the end of the day, like, what's your projection for Adrian? I guess real quick, before you actually answer that, I'll just talk a little bit about how I kind of see it. Yeah, I mean, I do think that Adrian, there's an outcome where Adrian could be a very, very solid quarterback this year, like third or fourth in the Big Ten, like maybe third in the Big Ten, like a very, very solid. Unless Omar is literally insane. If Omar Manning is like as good as advertised, like top 2 round NFL prospect type good, then there's a world where Adrian could have an insane downfield passing year just because he could open up the field that much. I'm not going out there and projecting that though. So realistically, you know, the more logical outcome would be somewhere slight improvements from last year, but nothing major, right?
Turnovers are
it's
a pretty fluent thing. If a player turns the ball over, I mean, it's just hard to see a giant leap in that. It makes games 50-50 games all the time. You know, no matter how good you are, the more you turn the ball over, just the more dangerous it is. I mean, look at the Rutgers game. We gave the ball up 4 times, so that game was close, like when it definitely shouldn't have been because it's Rutgers. Or, you know, just giving the ball away against good teams, it's just going to inflate that even worse. So, you know, I think we're going to have to live with that for Adrian for this next year, which is going to make games tough. And, you know, definitely it stunts his growth on how good of a quarterback he can be. With the turnovers as a thing, his passing can get, you know, I think maybe marginally better. You know, I think again, like I think he can be you know, not 130th in deep yard passing. I think he could be, you know, 75th. I think that's
and that would be a huge improvement from where we were last year.
Jump 50 spots, and I think that'd be a fantastic move for it. You know, I don't think that's out of the range of possibility for Adrian. But I think he could be a top 4, you know, Big Ten QB, like
fourth-ish,
like fourth, maybe third if Tanner Morgan sucks
is bad,
and Clifford's not great for Penn State, or you know Penix, you know, pick those 3 quarterbacks,
or if Ohio State finally doesn't have a good quarterback for once,
there's no way. Crowd is worse than Adrian Martinez. I mean that'd be insane. I'd be shocked.
Yeah, no chance. So I guess those are the question marks for me. I don't know. It seems unlikely.
He's just going to have to get more comfortable. I mean, I think definitely the nerves of getting injured is definitely on the forefront.
There was something lingering there during the year. Yeah.
And
he's lost some weight now.
So, you know, maybe, he gets a little bit faster. And maybe if he can get more comfortable in that closing pocket, I mean, that's just, you know, that's the difference in quarterbacks. That's why Tom Brady is the best quarterback of all time, is because his pocket awareness, his pocket presence, and how good he is at those just small movements of stepping up, stepping to the side. Get better at that. And just, I think his comfort level is huge.
And then finding guys he trusts to throw the ball to. And last year, it was literally only Wandale for most plays. Obviously, Austin Allen as well. But like,
you got to get over that. And if
across the middle that made plays was Wandale, basically, literally exclusively. So it's like, at this point, you got to be really worried, and that's where the question marks come. And so we're going to have to see which running backs take the lead, how this O-line ends up looking with so many moving parts, and replacing Jaime.
Hopefully he knows the playbook front and back now. It's his 4th year.
Yeah.
Again, just those little timing things. I remember watching crossing routes where, again, he'd be on the right guy, but, you know, it's the lack of a pump fake to get that linebacker to open up the guy. Or
it comes out a little late.
It's a little late, which I felt like was Adrian just most of the year. Where, the right guy, but you took too long, you know, and he's not ready to fire that ball off when he has a clean pocket.
Yeah, I agree. I think those progressions sometimes went a little bit slow for him, and hopefully we can see happen. I would love to see Adrian talk about some of these things he has a podcast now, and we talked about the NIL stuff, obviously, in our last video last week. But yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens with Adrian. I would love to see him talk about some of this nitty gritty football stuff now and maybe talk about some of his struggles with downfield passing last year or his just lack of throwing it downfield just in general, which is just a fact that he just didn't do it very often. Yeah. And talk about those things. And then, I would just like to see some of that conversation on his pod a little bit. I have listened to both episodes. They've been fun. But I'm hoping to see a little bit more from him talking about some football too. So we'll see. But at the end of the day, final prediction, Caleb, is answer the question we've all been waiting for. Be a good quarterback in 2021.
He is a great running quarterback. When it comes to passing, no, he's not a good
quarterback.
No, I mean, he hasn't won enough games, man. You gotta win games to be a good quarterback. And I think, this is a game of just a W or an L in the column sheet. And too many times our defense was not the problem in the game.
Right.
It was the offense.
Yeah, I mean, again, I 100% agree with you in a sense that when you take it from the perspective of is he a good college quarterback, I would say right now he's an okay college quarterback, but he's by no means
he's bad, but
a good college quarterback.
Good means you're winning a good portion of your games.
And you're a big reason why,
You have to be.
Yeah, and that has not been the case at this point. I agree he can make some plays, and I hope that him shedding a little bit of that weight can get him back to that extremely, if we can get back to that point with him being a little bit more elusive and then just a little bit more efficiency down
he's gonna have a full year of it next year.
That's not the case right now. So we need to get to that point and that uptick in efficiency downfield,
quick decision making,
and just getting through those progressions and making those decisive plays in the pocket. And we just haven't necessarily seen that yet. So I think we'd both lean on the side that he's not a good quarterback, but we're not ruling out that he can get to that point. But he has some roadblocks and a lot of variables right now with the offense to overcome. So that's kind of where I think we're both at as a whole.
Yeah, we'll be cheering for him the whole year.
Absolutely,
I mean, he's going to be our quarterback this fourth year. So
yes.
Hopefully he can do it because, man, we'll be watching every moment. So hopefully Nebraska's dominating. That is
for sure. So we hope you guys enjoyed this video. Obviously, I'd imagine you've already dropped a comment down below, but if you haven't yet, drop one down below. Drop all your thoughts on Adrian Martinez, the quarterback situation in Nebraska, and the quarterback situation in the Big Ten, and where Adrian stacks up against the competition, and what that looks like moving forward for Adrian, and what it would take for Adrian to become a great quarterback this year. So without further ado, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, like, comment, subscribe, share the video if you guys really enjoyed it. But as always, guys, I'm Josh. That's Caleb. This has been Backseat Sports. And guys, we will see you next time.
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.